A reading from the book of Genesis. When the Lord saw how great was man's wickedness on earth, and how no desire that his heart conceived was ever anything but evil, he regretted that he had made man on the earth, and his heart was grieved. So the Lord said, I will wipe out from the earth the men who I have created, and not only the men, but also the beasts, and the creeping things, and the birds of the air, for I am sorry that I made them. But Noah found favor with the Lord. Then the Lord said to Noah, Go into the ark, you and all your household, for you alone in this age have I found to be truly just. Of every clean animal, take with you 7 pairs, a male and its mate, and of the unclean animals 1 pair, a male and its mate. Likewise, of every clean bird of the air, 7 pairs, a male and a female, and all of them unclean birds 1 pair, a male and a female. Thus you will keep their issue alive over all the earth. 7 days from now I will bring rain down on the earth, for 40 days and 40 nights. And so I will wipe out from the surface of the earth every moving creature that I have made. Noah did just as the Lord had commanded him. As soon as the 7 days were over, the waters of the flood came upon the earth. Verbum Domini. The Lord will bless his people with peace.
The Lord will bless his people with peace.
Give to the Lord, you sons of God. Give to the Lord glory and praise. Give to the Lord the glory due his name. Adore the Lord in holy attire.
The Lord will bless his people with peace.
The voice of the Lord is over the waters, the Lord over vast waters. The voice of the Lord is mighty. The voice of the Lord is majestic.
The Lord will bless his people with peace.
The God of glory thunders, and in his temple all say, Glory. The Lord is enthroned above the flood. The Lord is enthroned as King forever.
Dominus vobiscum,
Et cum spiritu tuo,
Lectio Sancti Evangelii secundum Marcum.
gloria tibi, Domine.
The disciples had forgotten to bring bread, and they had only 1 loaf with them in the boat. Jesus enjoined them, watch out, guard against the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod. They concluded among themselves that it was because they had no bread. When he became aware of this, he said to them, "Why do you conclude that it is because you have no bread? Do you not yet understand or comprehend? Are your hearts hardened? You have eyes and not see, ears and not hear? And do you not remember when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000, how many wicker baskets full of fragments you picked up?" They answered him, 12. "When I broke the 7 loaves for the 4,000, how many full baskets of fragments did you pick up?" They answered, 7. He said to them, "Do you still not understand?" Verbum Domini.
Laus tibi Christe.
As we celebrate this memorial of St. Cyril and Methodius, who I've been discussing at length in my program, Threshold of Hope, going through Pope St. John Paul's encyclical about those two great apostles to the Slavic people, who brought the liturgy of St. John Chrysostom to these Slavic peoples, the pretty barbarian folks worshiping the god of thunder, and to whom he brought the gospel of Jesus Christ, but did so in their own Slavonic language and began these Eastern rites, not only at the behest of the Patriarch of Constantinople, but in full union and with full knowledge of the Pope of Rome. And they went back and forth and met with both the Patriarch and the Pope of Rome and received not only confirmation, but the Pope also ordained them as bishop. And so this is a great feast, and that's why Pope St. John Paul had just a few years before that encyclical decreed them to be co-patrons of Europe, because in fact more than half of Europe are Slavic people. And so we have to remember the whole of Europe, and this was part of his call for us to breathe with both lungs of the church, the East and the West. It's very important to remember. But we also need to pay attention to today's readings. I'll talk more about St. Cyril Methodius later this afternoon. But in the readings today, we have texts dealing with salvation in boats. Well, that's what we have here in common. One time being in the boat is life or death, and the other time it's talking about, or at least hinting towards, the bread of life. In Genesis, this is the beginning of the flood narrative. It's important to remember the story of the flood is taught by practically every people of the ancient world, whether it's the Australian Aborigines, North American native people, whether it's the people of the far Eastern Orient or the Middle East, people in Western Asia. All around the world, they told the story of the flood, almost certainly related to the end of the last ice age, when global warming caused real panic, because it was very, very serious. And we even had that movie that, in my opinion, was dumber than a box of rocks rather than a bottle of rain, about Noah, because it tried to portray the period before the flood as being overly industrialized and polluted. bless their hearts, but there were only 5 million people on the earth. There are that many in Alabama right now. And they could barely smelt copper. It was the only metal they knew how to work with in those days. They hadn't even invented bronze. So, these are silly people, in my opinion. But they bring up something that is part of modern day. There is a strong sense of impending catastrophe, partly because people need the psychological adrenaline of being on the edge of survival. Oftentimes they're sipping latte, complaining about how catastrophic the situation is with global warming, forgetting it took some electricity to heat up the steam. And as they deal with this, we have people who say, oh, we've got to reduce the population of the world. That the catastrophe is such that some people have told me, report on the news, that there are those who want to reduce the population to 50 million. That would be 1/6 of the United States population. And others, a professor out east, wants to reduce to 5 million. Presumably, he wants to be among them. And this kind of approach is their way of bringing tension, excitement, fear. That's why we've got to have abortion. There's too many people that are going to destroy the planet. That's oftentimes the issue. There's not room for all these new people. Kill them. Make room for me in the lifeboat of Earth. And then I wonder, if they reduce the population of 5 million, who's going to ship them coffee in order to make their latte to discuss these things? And with it, and this is one of the very important things, when you have that sense of impending doom, you will do what we see here and in many of the other ancient texts. Somebody is at fault. In the case of the Babylonians, in their story of the flood, it found in the Epic of Gilgamesh, tablet 11, there Noah was called Utnapishtim. Why was there a flood? Because the gods were upset with one of the goddess of love. And as a result, because she liked the human beings, said, well, she's a goddess, we can't punish her, so let's kill the people. And that'll get her upset. But it was her fault. And people had to suffer, and so one of her other god relatives told Utnapishtim to make an ark. In modern times, we see, well, it's too many people, too much production of electricity or other manufacture, and et cetera, et cetera. All of these things are causing it. And these become the new morality. And therefore, in their view, it becomes a moral statement, a moral position to insist on birth control and abortion and such. And the reduction of the population is the moral imperative, no matter what it takes, because that's what's destroying the planet, people. And they'll create their own mythologies of how people before industrialization, just left the earth in pristine position, which the more you study about the past, it's not quite that way either. People were changing the environment in the Amazon. Why do you think there's so many fruit trees scattered throughout the Amazon jungle? Because people planted them. The people before Columbus were more numerous in the Amazon than today, and more sophisticated because they planted fruit trees. Now, they couldn't grow corn, But they changed the environment. Humans have had impact. And a myth of a paradise with no humans and nothing to mess it up is actually Jurassic Park, which brings, even in the movies, its own kind of disaster. We have to pay attention to what is going on here. In the text in Genesis, it's not that humans have made an impact on the environment. It's rather the flood is understood not because of some goddess or God affecting, the other gods and getting them mad. It's because of humans choosing to do evil according to the natural law. These are not people who know the 10 Commandments. That would be long, long after. There's no revelation of the 10 Commandments. And people don't have a sense that they're breaking those laws of God, but there's a natural law that they should know about the inherent rights of all human beings, the rights that we've enshrined in our own declaration, the right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, rights to life, that you protect human life and base certain principles by just thinking about you don't want to do to other people what you don't want them to do to you. That's the most basic statement of the natural law in its simplest form, and anybody can understand that. And people were punished for breaking that law and becoming wicked to their heart. Not only doing a few mistakes here and there and committing a few sins that would be on the outside. They chose in their heart to reject worship of the one God, and respect and honor of human beings. And if anything, we see that kind of disregard of life very much present in the modern world, far worse than in many of the ancient world. Again, the 20th century was more violent than any other century in history, with 305 million people being killed by the governments with their secular ideologies that disregarded human rights. And it didn't begin in the 20th century. This is part of the reality of the fallenness of human beings that we've been reading about in Genesis. From Adam and Eve, the murder of Cain and Abel. There are plenty of Cains who are going around killing the innocent. And they will continue to be. And the Lord finds Noah because he finds favor with him. And how does he identify Noah? What distinguishes Noah? You alone have I found to be truly just. He's the first person in the Bible to be called just and upright. Then later on they'll call him upright as well. No one else is. And this is something that distinguishes him. This is one of the reasons why the flood became such an important prediction, in a sense, not of catastrophes with or industrialization so much as it is a prediction of baptism. Baptism that is meant to be the washing away of sin from our lives so that we can become righteous people, that we too can become upright in a moral way. And that instead of the wood of the ark, it's the wood of the cross that becomes the power that saves us in the washing by baptism. That is, as St. Peter says, in comparing baptism to the flood in 1 Peter 3, he said, baptism now saves you. It's not a washing of the external body. It is a cleansing of the conscience, a transformation on the inside. And this is the ongoing struggle for all of us. Now, one of the things we also see that applies to us from the gospel are the apostles are doing what Mother Angelica used to point out often. They're being dodos. This was one of her regular critiques of the apostles. This would be a primary place. Though, as I often point out, she called them dodos less and less the older she got and the closer to meeting them she got. But here they are being foolish because Christ is warning them about the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod. Herod killed John the Baptist. The Pharisees conspired with the Herodians to kill Jesus. And in coming chapters, we'll see in Mark's gospel how the two of them, when they get to Jerusalem, they will keep on trying to trick Jesus, trip him up. That in their hardness of heart and in their lack of understanding, they actively tried to undo Christ. The disciples are a bit different. And this is where Mother called them dodos, mostly because we can resonate with that ourselves. We can all be dodos. And one of the elements here is they don't yet understand or comprehend. Do you still not understand? These rhetorical questions, Jesus isn't asking that as if he doesn't know. These are rhetorical questions because they don't understand. They think he's talking, you didn't bring bread. And you can imagine in the boat, I told you to bring more bread. All you brought is one piece. Jesus is hungry. And you can imagine, and they wouldn't be blaming themselves, probably each other. That would be normal. But what they do when they receive that rebuke is that they remain with Jesus. The Pharisees and Herodians hear Christ's rebuke any number of times, and they say, oh, well, the heck with you. I want nothing to do with you, and I will seek to undo you. It's not just that they'll leave him alone, they will try to undo him. And some people who don't understand Christ become his enemies and hate him and oppose him. The apostles don't understand, but they keep with him. They keep coming to him after he rebukes them. They don't leave except for one. But the rest stay with him in their misunderstanding and allow him to correct them again and again. Only one walks out into the night and darkness and lives his last day in that darkness. The other 11 continue to seek to understand, even after the resurrection, when they still don't understand. They're still looking. They still don't understand that it's not the lack of bread. As a matter of fact, they have with them in the boat one loaf, not the piece of bread that they think they have to break into 13 pieces and share and still go hungry all day. It's rather they have Christ, the bread of life, in the boat with them. And in fact, in this gospel, bread will not be mentioned again until the Last Supper, when Jesus speaks to the bread and says, "This is my body." Do they quite understand? Not fully. Do they even understand in Acts of the Apostles? Not always. But they stay with him. And that their gift of becoming righteous is one that is possible only because they remain faithful to him and keep allowing themselves to be corrected, improved, and develop in understanding, as he tells them earlier in the gospel, the mystery of the kingdom of God.